Good day, this is Mike Hittner with Historic Point Basse Update. Today we're out on the Klement Brothers Sugar Shack. They're in the point of doing their harvesting of maple sap and cooking down of maple syrup. We're right now out around the area where the maples are. You can see them tapped here with the blue bags on them. And they tap about 300 trees here and they render down that sap and make maple syrup. Of course, in a good year, it's anywhere from 30 to 1 ratio. Regular year is about 40 to 1. We're talking 41, we're saying 40 gallons of maple sap to make 1 gallon of maple syrup. You can see how they got it bound up here. It comes off on a tap, and then they got a bag around there to protect from the water getting in it. And you can see they just emptied these yesterday, and today it's kind of rainy and cold. So there isn't much. There's probably an inch and a half of sap in there. But the bags they can reuse. These sandwich bags, of course, they replace, and this is just put on here so that doesn't blow off. But you can see the taps all around here. Some trees have 2 on it, but I think the majority of what I see here are mostly 1s, depending on the diameter of the tree. So we're just going to show you a little bit. We do the same thing at Point Basse. But of course, we do it on a much smaller scale, and of course on March 26th, a Saturday coming up, not too far in the future, 10 to 4, you can come down and see how the early pioneers did it. Also how the Native Americans did it with putting rocks in a hollowed out log. And with us, we use a big cauldron and put the maple sap in there and then cook it under a boiling fire underneath that. Of course, that's a long process, and out here as we go into the sugar shack itself, we'll find out how long of a process it is and how they do it a little more. They're not commercial here, but how they do it a little more commercially than, say, the average person that's just going to do half a dozen trees at their own home. So
yeah, I think it has to be at least a 12-inch
diameter tree,
actually width, thick,
yeah,
12-inch thick tree.
And some of these are probably just on the edge. Actually, they're
that's
they're
probably
close.
about an 8 there.
Yeah,
maybe 7.
And they only got 1 on there, but some trees out here you can see are probably 12, 14, 16 inches or something like that. But a lot of them are the 2 we do at Point Basse. We only do 2 trees. We put 3 taps on each tree, but they're probably somewhere about 24, 30 inches. Nick Ververka is with us today. He's a volunteer both here and out at Historic Point Basse. Nick, you want to explain a little bit about the bag system here? He's got a bag and also that baggie on top, which keeps the water out. When today we got a kind of a rainy day we talked about.
Yeah, the wind will take this stuff off, so that's why we use a rubber band.
And the bags can you use for more than 1 season, or?
No, we just use those for 1 season.
1 season.
Yeah, and we usually only tap trees that are 8 inches in diameter or larger.
Okay.
And
if they're a little bigger, maybe 2 taps or 3 taps.
Yeah, there's some big trees back in there. We've got 4 taps.
4 taps
because
on.
They've got such a large crown on it. We always look at the size of the crown to determine whether it was going to be a good tree to tap.
No, Nick, do you know if these are just maple, or are they sugar maple, or?
They're hard maples.
Hard maples.
That's what I kind of thought. Yeah, possibly.
Yeah. Yeah. Because of the bark. Usually the soft maple's got a real smooth bark on them.
Yeah. The hard maple, a lot of people think that makes the best syrup is hard maple.
Well, it's got a higher sugar content than what the silver maples have. Like we have out at Wakely, those are 2 big silver maple trees. They give you a lot of sap, but the sugar content isn't quite as high, so you don't get quite as much.
You got to do a lot more cooking down, sort of thing, to get it. Now these were put out 10 days ago or so?
No, we made up we make all of these up, put them on these homemade throats that Mike makes.
Yes.
And use a zip tie to hold them on there. And we were out here Monday, it was the last Monday in February, and we made up all of them. And we decided, well, it was a nice sunny day. Let's go out and see if the sap's running. So we tapped a tree over there, and the sap was just running. So
we just got
we decided we better start hanging.
Yeah.
So we went out. We got about a third of them done that Monday, and then the Tuesday we came out and put the rest of the bags out. And then it shut off, and we didn't get any sap.
And basically it's been shut off up until maybe about 5-6 days ago, and then it started flowing again. And now, of course, we're damp and cold and rainy, so we're not really getting anything now.
Yeah, we don't expect the sap will run well again until Friday, Saturday when we
Yeah,
get some sunny days and nights below freezing.
How
That's
long
ideal.
can you go? Is it till the trees bud a little bit, or do you
That you'll have to ask Mike. He's the one that makes the call.
Yeah,
when
yeah.
the sap's done running, we can stop.
Yeah.
And usually there's quite a bit of difference in the syrup that we make from the early sap to the late sap. The early sap, when we cook that down, becomes a real light syrup, light colored and lighter flavored. And it seems like the finishing of the last batch, I know last year we did 7 batches, and that one is what they call a grade B syrup. It's dark, and it's my favorite.
Yes,
because
I
it's
like
the
that better
richest
too.
flavor. It's got the
Yeah.
richest flavor.
Yes.
Well, it's robust and it's got a real maple flavor. The light stuff is so light, and I know that golden color is what's considered ideal, but to me it just doesn't make it compared to the grade B. I'd take grade B any day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I especially like the
Yeah,
real dark, rich stuff.
yeah,
That's the first time I heard about, you know, kind of makes sense though, because the bigger crown, it makes her a healthier tree probably, right? It, you know.
yeah.
Well, it's going to need more sap to serve all the buds.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And so you're going to get a better chance. You know, I mean, there are trees out here that we used to tap that the wind broke off, and so well, you're not going to waste a tap on that one.
Right.
Like this tree right here,
Yeah.
it's got the top broken off, so
Yeah.
we
Okay.
won't- that'd be a waste of time.
Right.
Yeah. Good info.
Okay, it's picking up a little on rain out here, so
Yeah.
we're gonna go into the sugar shack and talk to Mike and Nick and get the lowdown on the process inside the sugar shack.
Nick, is it mainly just the rain, or is it just cold and rain combined? I mean, if it's warm enough, you'd probably get sap even a rainy day, huh?
No differential, I
Or
think.
or is it rain really put the end to most days?
The overcast is what the thing is. The sunshine just seems to perk the trees up and get things flowing.
Uh-huh.
So if you get up into the 40s, upper 30s and 40s, the sun's shining, and especially if it's a calm day, that's when the sap really starts flowing.
Sunny and calm,
if it gets sunny, but it's real windy, and it just seems like the trees are too busy.
huh? Okay,
I don't know, maybe they're not getting warm enough to get the sap flowing.
sure.
Well, and I think what we haven't had much this year is a differential between night and day.
Yes, that's been a problem.
And you can see there are wood piles here. Mike's out collecting some wood that he's aged well and getting ready to put it in and smoke her up, or at least get it ready to put in. And oh, I see he's got quite a bit. Mike, besides working on maple sugar, I see you're working on eggs also out here.
Eggs, yeah. You're welcome to it. You like pickled eggs?
So what in a season, Mike, do you have any idea on a good season how much wood you go through for a good season? I know it makes a lot of difference from year to year, but what do you think?
Those 3 woodsheds.
3 woodsheds full, huh?
So that one and the one behind, and then there's one over here. Wow, that's a lot of wood.
That'd be about 18 face courses.
How many?
18 face courses.
Okay.
18 face courts.
Yeah,
And
they
then
told about 6.
how much would you make out of that maple syrup on a good year? Like 40 gallons or
75.
75 gallons? Yeah. And it all depends on
Last year was a bad year. We carried 3 gallons
yeah.
syrup with
Well, and I always tell everybody, if they price maple syrup for what it should sell for, the guys working like Mike Klement and Nick here are working for about 50 cents an hour before you begin to take what the wages would take.
I figured I have about 2 hours in for every foot. So,
Yeah, I imagine.
and if you got $20 for a week, you lost $10.
Yeah, you see people
That
that.
don't cover any of your expenses.
Yeah, I was gonna say you don't, and for your equipment and everything else, and not even cover the beer.
Definitely not.
So we have an evaporator pan here, and About how many gallons do you start with in there of sap?
This morning, between the two cookers,
2
we
cookers?
started with almost 75 gallons.
75 gallons of sap.
Yeah. I won't start unless I get 200 gallons.
Now, so far this year, because this is your first time you're cooking down, you haven't made any syrup yet. You're in the process of making the syrup.
Yeah, well, we won't have it finished today, we'll finish it tomorrow.
Finish it in that one tomorrow. And what if you want to take a shot at this, where are we in the process? Are we like halfway there, Mike? What do you think? I know you probably use a hydrometer or something like
Yeah,
that, but
we're, yeah, it wouldn't take test it, but, you can just tell by degrees too.
Mike's going to show us like with degrees or hydrometer how you test it a little bit.
Let's get a five.
Yeah, you see the fire on this end here, and the fire goes all the way under the pan, and then you can see where the syrup is keep adding here. And then you have another pan. What do you call this pan here?
Preheater.
The preheater. So there's a preheater pan here, and that's where the sap comes in, and then that's where the smoke goes out. So you got the fire on this end, and then all the heat just goes right underneath that pan and out. And that's really pretty neat system here.
Mike's going to check the temperature here and get somewhat of an idea where you're at with the temperature. Mike, on your wood, mostly oak, a little maple.
Mostly oak. Mostly oak. With little maple.
Yeah.
It's whatever blew down.
Yeah,
If it will, fine.
there's always that old saying, if you had 5 acres of wood, you'd have enough with the down trees and everything, you could probably go on for a lifetime of wood almost, for firewood anyway.
It's 144 degrees.
And what are you looking for?
What kind of temperature are you looking for?
219.
119 it was done.
Yeah, we're 167, 168.
I don't know if I got that.
So what temperature do you get this in here before you transfer it to the finishing area?
It's not by temperature, it's by the amount of sap we have.
Okay, yeah.
If it fits in that.
Well, it's, it won't all fit in there at once, but I can't get this too thin or it'll burn.
Sure.
Is there a value to the burnt, or is it a waste product?
It's a waste product.
It's not like you can make maple sugar out of it, it's beyond that point.
It's beyond that point. It'll taste good. So, here we're at 209.
209.
Going up pretty fast.
209.5.
Yeah.
Digital was really nice. You can tell. Last year they're about 219.2, I think it was.
Does it vary a little bit from year to year?
It's very safe on the
Robin. In a good year, you said you would 75 or 80 gallons?
Good year, we should be able to make 75 gallons.
75 gallons.
Sometimes you could possibly make more.
Yeah.
Like, usually it takes 40 gallons of sap to make a gallon of syrup. But last year the sugar content was way down. It took us 52 gallons of sap to get a gallon of
And
syrup.
that's one reason why it was kind of a bad year. You made about half as much as you normally do, right? Around 35,
Then
40
we
gallons.
got less sap.
We had less sap too. It was kind of an odd year because it was on again, off again, and then it just quit or whatever.
Yeah, you needed to get it 20 degrees, down to the 20s at night, which was 40s during the day. And last year it was either warm or too cold. We didn't get that variation.
And we haven't had much of it this year either. Not with sun,
No.
it's, and now we're getting rain and it's gonna be probably, well, last night I checked temperature was about 35 or 38, this morning it was 35 or 38, so that isn't gonna bring anything down.
But what's a good day is nice sunny day with a cold night before, and then not a lot of wind. The wind through that blows the heat off the trees.
And we noticed too down the Wakely, we do soft maples, most years are hard maples here.
Yeah.
And we noticed down there, we got two big trees there, what, Nick, probably 40 inches, 50 inches around or something like that. But they're standing out by themselves in the middle where the sun can hit them. Of course, those will be much quicker than your trees because you're in the middle of a forest.
Yes. Yes. It makes a difference too where you are, like over here, it's more open. Here's back there, we got more pines and stuff, shading, so there will go slow. Then if you do the sunny side of the tree, you'll get more sap in the bag on the sunny side. Then on the shaded side, that comes later.
Usually, Nick was telling me when you first put your bags out, I think it was the last February, you were trudging through like a foot of snow yet.
Yes.
Yeah. But when we put them out, one of the trees was running then because
That's what Nick said. He said you put a tack in and it was like running, so then we did a number of them that day as much as you could get done. So
You want to explain your finishing pan thing? I know right now you're just using it as a cooker, but you wouldn't have that
on this
crossover.
one, we have the bigger pan in the back.
Okay.
We got the smaller pan in the front. Because when we cook down in a day, we usually get 5 to 6 gallons of syrup. And by having the smaller pan here, you have less surface area, so you can have more sap in there, so you have less chance of burning.
okay.
And
Excuse me.
when it gets down to that finish, it gets real touchy to shut the heat off and stuff. Because if you leave it, it can foam up on you and run over the top. And if you're prepared for it to foam up, you have some butter or a little bit of oil. You put that in there, that'll knock that foam down right away.
So do you have that on hand just in case, Mike?
No,
No. You should, but you don't have it.
I should, but I don't have it here now, but I'll probably have it out here before we cook too much more.
Okay.
Usually if we watch it with that thermometer, and then we always test it with the hydrometer.
Sure. And that's perfect, Mike, what you're saying, throw a little butter in there, because that's what we like on our pancakes too, a little butter and maple syrup.
A little butter, a little oil.
Yeah.
These kettles are what we use to transfer the sap from here to the other pan when this is cooked down and ready. So tomorrow morning, what's left in here that we've left cooked down overnight, we'll bring into these kettles and we'll, and as we've got room to put them in the pans over there, we'll cook them down until it goes into the finishing product. And then then we'll use the kettle to collect the finished sap to take it back and bottle.
You bottle that at the home
Yeah.
rather than here, because you usually don't have facilities.
We have, when we bottle it, we always, the bottle's gotta be washed real clean. And we fill them with hot water. So when you fill the bottle with syrup, you dump the hot water out and you pour the hot syrup in so the glass goes crack.
Right.
And then there's also, when you screw the top on, then you typically lay them on the side to
Okay.
heat up the cap to help that seal. We have both metal caps and we have the plastic clip caps.
Is there one better than the other?
Well, the one's a little bit cheaper than the other. The No, cheaper. But the plastic ones are nice for on the table. So we've started modeling a bunch of pint bottles too, because they're easier to pick up than the corks and stuff.
I know at home we get it in quarts, but we pour it in the pint bottles just because it's a lot easier to use it on the table. And as you and I have gotten used to it, Mike, over the years, when you go to a pancake feed, if they don't have real maple syrup, you take it with you because it gets so spoiled by it.
Yeah, so
You want to talk about how a hydrometer works and how you
so
use
this
it?
is a hydrometer.
And those are expensive, I know.
Well, I always have two on hand. They break easy.
Yes.
So what I'll do is dip this in the sap and get that full, almost full. And I'll put the hydrometer in there. And the hydrometer's got the different marks on there.
And this kind of floats in the
This
sap?
will float in the sap. And there's two different marks on there. And one's for, they're for two different temperatures. So the hot sap, you use the top one. And the cold, cooler sap, you use the bottom one. And that'll float for you, and when that floats and that's right at that mark, it's right consistency. But I have found that when I do it, I don't take it quite to that mark,
A little bit
because
below.
when I take it home, I heat it up again, and if I took it to that mark, I'll end up with some sugar in the bottom.
Yeah, then you'll have that little granulation be settling in there.
Yeah. So then the bottles are harder to wash out too.
Yeah. Well,
So-
you probably learned that from experience, Mike, over the
Yeah.
years.
So we usually don't take it quite there. But like last year, it was running at 219.2 degrees when it was finished. I'll just leave this up because I'll be using it tomorrow.
Yeah, and how many years, Mike, have you been making maple syrup? I know
Well,
you
probably-
started different than this, certainly.
Probably about 18. Actually, I got, if you want to take a bottle that's from 2015 and try it, you do that for the, we got a quart for you.
So about 18 years have been made. How did you get in? 8 years. 8 years. How did you get into it? I mean, what got you thinking
Well,
about doing it?
I had a friend that worked at was making it, and he brought some in, and he gave me some, and it's pretty good. And, yeah, it's pretty easy to make, and I got that little pan
A
there.
whole bottle like that, holy smokers.
You guys can take them with you.
Thank you.
And I got trees at home and made it. First thing I used was ice cream pails. And I put them out by the trees, came home and it was running good that day. Everyone was running.
Oh, no.
What's going on
The
with the ground?
ground was all wet, so,
What are you using, like a 5-quart pail or just a quart?
they were 5-quart pills.
5-quart pails.
You know, on a good day, you can fill one of these 3-gallon bags.
Okay.
We've had that at Wakely sometimes where we didn't get there and the 5-gallon bucket overflowed and stuff.
Yeah, it's surprising how fast
Yeah.
it comes when it starts really coming.
Yes.
And I probably maybe a little more so, Mike, on the soft maples, because I think they got a little more flow.
Yeah.
Not as rich in sugar content, but more quantity anyway. So
Mhm.
I think that's the sort of thing that goes. So
So towards the end of the season, the syrup will get darker. They even, like, this is our first batch last year. That's a lot darker than normal. But it was a different year. The darker it gets, actually, the more flavor it has.
Yep.
well, Nick and Don and I were outside talking. We were looking at the trees, and we were saying we preferred it darker because it's got more flavor to it as far as we're concerned. The lighter, that golden one, might be the premier one, but to me, it doesn't have a taste.
You probably, I noticed, you know, because Nick gave me a little bit of this last year, and I noticed that I used to get my syrup from some buddies up in Mattoon that did it over a campfire, and I noticed that had that wood flavor in it that I really like, and yours does too. So it's that's really
The ones that do it with osmosis, don't seem to have quite as good flavor.
Exactly, I agree, yeah.
Yeah, I see if the maple producers get into what we call quote unquote big time, they tend to have tubes and they have reverse osmosis, which takes a great percentage of the water out of it. So they start with less product and they have less to boil down and that sort of thing. So
They got a lot of fancier cookers, but, you know, you can spend $8,000-9,000 real quick on one. This here is, it works for us, and
Yes.
this is a hobby.
and like with you and Nick and the others that help you here, it's a labor of love. You know, there's no other way to say it. It's a camaraderie and it's the love of doing something together, you know, for a greater good. And so,
It's a good place to get away and play a game of cribbage.
There you go.
and watch the turkeys go by.
Yeah. That's kind of how it is at Wakely with our Monday group, you know.
Yeah.
You know, probably a quarter of the time is just visiting and getting, you know, and just,
Well, and that's just as
kind of-
important as the work that gets done, really.
yeah. Keep everybody together, you know, yeah.
It's just like, when we put a bunch of, folders in the pews at our church, Nick and I and some other guys. It was fun.
Yeah,
You know, it's work, but it's fun to get together.
exactly.
Did you guys get all those Missalette books?
Yeah,
You got all those done?
332.
332, because I know Nick was telling me about it. He had a project come up, and he said, oh, we gotta go do this.
Yeah, 4,000 meals.
4,000 nails.
Wow.
Where'd you use screws? Nails?
Well, we use screws to screw them on, but nails,
Put them together.
Put them together, put the,
instead of clamping them with glue, we put glue on them and then nail them together. Nails serve as a clamp.
wow.
Sure.
You know, and the glue is, you know, real golden.
Well, thank you very much, Mike and Nick, for explaining the process here and on the Klement Brothers sugar bush here. And so it was kind of nice to come out and visit, and I'm sure the public will like to view this because a lot of people have never seen the process, either didn't know somebody that did it or maybe just didn't have the interest to go pursue it. So thank you very much for your time and appreciate your courtesies here. Thank you very much.
Thank you.